Stephen Yates. He is a expert at all things foreign policy. He's with the America First Policy Institute, but he wears many hats. He joins us. Always good to see you, my friend. Why was he there? Why did Biden go?
Well, I wish I had a great answer that would make it obvious to you and everyone else why this makes sense, other than the magic of the calendar. And we've talked multiple times, but I think it bears repeating. This administration seems to think that comms strategy is the only thing that is necessary, that if they can manipulate the narrative, somehow the world will follow. I don't see why this was necessary. I don't necessarily object, but I would like, as an American, for the president to be defining what is the end state of our mission there. What exactly is our role? I mean, we had this debate in our country about unilateralism versus multilateralism and all that. And Biden and the Democrats were almost 100% on the multilateralism approach. Who's the multilateral coming along for this conversation to bring money and risk and whatever? I think there's actually some degree of risk of reinforcing the notion that this is just Joe versus Vladimir and Ukraine is the turf, when that is not, in fact, what's supposed to be happening. It should be Europeans helping Europeans, it's supposed to be NATO proving its value. And it was supposed to be focusing on some kind of a defined objective with some sense that there would be an end point. That's actually kind of what 2016's election was all about, and 2020 was supposed to be continuity on that front. So I am very, very frustrated with trying to watch how this plays out. The endless amounts of money without a discernible, measurable, accountable, verifiable goal is very concerning to me, as I think it is to many other Americans. And I don't really appreciate our elected officials just saying, because this is so important, this is good versus evil. I think we need a little more than that.
See, and that's the thing. We're talking to our friend Stephen Yates that I feel like this comes down to, and I was telling everybody earlier, I'm the only person in my house with this viewpoint. I don't think that Russia is the biggest geopolitical threat. And you and I agree on this. I still think it's China. To that end, I realize, and I think that this has been presented by Mike Pompeo and others before. They think that Russia is going to try to piece together back the old Soviet republic. I think that's a huge leap. That's what all of this seems to be predicated upon. That, well, if they're not just going to stop here, they're going to continue going and going and going until they threaten NATO countries and until they're on the doorstep of NATO. And you and I have discussed this before. Well, they are on the doorstep of NATO. Basic geography 101. I mean, I don't think that that's their end goal. Who knows what their end goal is? I mean, isn't that part of the Russian thing, is that they try to be spooky and mysterious and weird? I mean, who knows what their end goal is? I just don't think it's that.
Right. Well, I mean, I have a colleague at America First Policy Institute, General Keith Kellogg. He spent multiple days there on the front lines. I will gladly take a back seat to his vast expertise on military and material when it comes to conflict and where all this is going. But I also very, very much believe that the president of the United States, especially the current president, is not equipped to define what the military strategy and material are to bring this to a successful conclusion. The job of the president is to shape, organize, lead, rally, sell. What are we doing? Why and with whom? And what are the measurable guideposts, and how do we know when we're clearing them? And that's kind of the job of a CEO, not the military affairs department of the enterprise. That's what Joe Biden's supposed to be occupying. We have Kamala Harris going to the Munich Security Conference again to have some meetings that, again, don't really say that much. And then a president shows up unannounced. Not that big a deal. When the president goes to a war zone, tend not to give a lot of advance notice. There's kind of odd things, but this itinerary is weird. But if you're going to do it, you should have a punchline. When George W. Bush went into Iraq or Afghanistan to rally troops, the purpose of it was to show up and give solidarity to the troops. It was to push a government to say, be a little less corrupt, pick up more of this burden sharing, rally the coalition. There were definable objectives. You could agree or disagree with the war, but there was a purpose.
To your point, I wanted to play this really quickly for you and have you react to this soundbite. This is Kamala Harris. This is at that Munich. This is before, and then she tried to drop the mic on this and then hopped on a broken down plane. But she mentioned, this makes me wonder if this was their purpose in being here, but it didn't seem very clearly articulated. Listen to the soundbite.
We are also troubled that Beijing has deepened its relationship with Moscow since the war began. Looking ahead, any steps by China to provide lethal support to Russia would only reward aggression, continue the killing, and further undermine a rules-based order.
That's a very odd way of saying it, but she said if China provides lethal support, it's going to continue aggression and killing. Yeah, if you provide killy stuff, it's going to kill people. Do you think that that's maybe why it is? Are they trying to sort of like offset? Because there were these overtures that, meetings between Beijing and Moscow, et cetera. Is that the whole reason then?
It's just that it just feel like these people imagine they're playing tiddlywinks. They're getting together with stone cold killers. And they think that if I warn you that a rules-based order will be undermined if you keep doing what you're doing, what is this rules-based order? There isn't order. There's just power and the naked exercise of that power. And if you walk in as the pencil neck geek trying to say tisk, 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 people are going to be upset. These people are not deterred by that. Secretary Blinken wanted to warn Beijing, well, don't do that. It will just escalate a situation. Beijing doesn't have a problem putting Muslims in a concentration camp, stomping on the people of Hong Kong, threatening to incinerate the people of Taiwan, float magical, mysterious balloons over us and send COVID out into the world. And, oh, by the way, poison you with fentanyl, too. Do you really think they care about a rules-based order? The only way to stop a forceful, powerful bully is to be forceful and bully them back. And if we don't have the stomach or strategy to do that, that's a choice. But this other thing is just asking to be a doormat to get walked over.
Yeah, bullying is part of diplomacy. I wanted to ask you about the situation with this Nord Stream pipeline stuff, because the way that the Russians are putting it, the U.S. did it to poor old little old Russia. How dare they? Look, we blew up their pipeline. I don't know if that's true or not, but I just think in terms of aggression, you publicly bragging about how you basically can put your foot on the neck of Europe with energy supply seems like that's a pretty big step of aggression if aggression is on the menu of discussion. I wanted to get kind of your thoughts on that whole, because I feel like that's growing. That whole controversy is growing.
Well, the controversy is growing, but the event is sort of in the distant past. And so there's sort of this bureaucratic and human inertia to say, well, that was really bad, and we were probably manipulated and misinformed, and whatever effect it was going to have probably should have happened then. The sort of uncovering of evidence now has a little bit more of a dull thud upon arrival. It does show the lengths to which the government is willing to go to seemingly around the edges try to influence and deter and disrupt. But they never, if they're not going to communicate, what is the ultimate objective? And what am I going into this meeting to dissuade someone from invading? And then they invade anyway? What's this other stuff you're doing? If you're going to go try to say, Beijing, don't send them arms, and then they do anyway, then what? You're still stuck with less influence. So I think that the whole problem, whether it's the pipeline, whether it's the jawboning, the showing up unannounced without really much of an agenda other than we're going to pay you more money and send you more weapons, it's just more of the same. And I was told as a kid that if you keep doing the same thing, don't expect different results.
You and Einstein, I'm telling you. See, great minds, great minds. Stephen Yates, always a pleasure. You can find him on Twitter at YatesComms. Thank you so much for letting us pick your brain. We appreciate it. Good to see you.
Thank you so much, Dana. Take care.
Of course, you too.